I shouldn't have looked at him that way. But I did, and it changed everything. My name's James. I'm 27, just a courier doing deliveries, and I had stopped believing in anything beyond the daily grind until that day. The day the towel became more than just fabric. He was the man in the towel. Always the man in the towel. When I first knocked on the penthouse door, it swung open with that lazy ease, revealing him standing there, half dry, half wrapped in a thin white towel that clung to him like a secret. His eyes met mine, calm and unreadable. I tried not to stare, but I looked. You tell me if it was wrong to feel this. The silence between us was louder than words. No introductions, no forced politeness, just a nod and a small gesture for me to bring the package inside. The air smelled faintly of soap and steam, something warm and familiar. I felt the heat from his skin, even from where I stood. The towel shifted with a subtle movement, and I wondered if he realized how careful I was not to look. Or maybe he did, and he let me. Every delivery since, the ritual repeats. Door opens, towel in the frame, a glance that says things without speaking them. There's a stillness that holds us, a fragile tension hanging between short meetings. I learn his name is Henry, but I barely say mine. It's enough to see him, to hold the space where nothing is claimed, but everything is hinted at. He smiles sometimes, just a twitch of lips, and it feels like a small victory. But other times, the silence stretches, thick and unyielding. I wonder about the man behind the towel, the stories he hides beyond that door. And still, I keep coming back, to the heat, to the unspoken. He never invites me in, beyond the threshold, just that momentary glimpse. It's as if the towel itself is a boundary, a barrier, holding emotions at bay. But I'm drawn to it, to him, like a moth circling a fragile flame. I touch the package with trembling hands, a small gift of normality amidst the strange, delicate dance unfolding in shadow. You see, I wasn't looking for this, not this kind of connection, not this slow unraveling of something raw, something uncertain. But the heart doesn't listen to logic or reason. It remembers the warmth of skin, the softness of breath on the neck, even before a word is said. There's a rhythm to these moments, the sound of footsteps, the soft rustle of towel against skin, the barely there brush of fingers as I hand over the parcels. It's a slow burn, a quiet confession carried in glances and pauses. And I wait for the day when the door will open, not just for deliveries, but for something more. He said once, without words, just a glance, the kind that says, I see you. And in that look, everything shifted. It was no longer about the packages or the routine. It was about two lives brushing close enough to spark, unsure if the flame would catch or fade. I stood there, heart hammering against the cage of my ribs, wondering who he was beyond the towel and the silence. Could he be the answer to a question I didn't know how to ask? Or was I just fooling myself, caught in the illusion of a glance, a moment? You judge me if you want. You tell me if it was foolish to hope. But I remember him, always the man in the towel, and the way that simple gesture lit something inside me that I thought had gone cold. The days folded into each other, like pages in a worn book. Every delivery to Henry's penthouse, a new sentence in a story I couldn't stop reading. The silence between us was no longer empty. It was heavy, with things unsaid, with long looks and weighted pauses. You wouldn't understand if you hadn't been there, standing outside that door, waiting for it to open, just a little wider. Each morning, I woke with that quiet anticipation, the same nervous beat thrumming beneath my skin as I stepped into the elevator. The package in my hands felt like an excuse, a reason to see him again. The door swung open the way it always did. One towel, one heartbeat. He was never rushing, always calm, always quiet, as if the world beyond that door didn't exist. I learned to read the language of his eyes, the fleeting curl of a smile, the way he shifted slightly when our hands brushed, even if just by chance. Each moment carved a space between us, delicate and trembling. I never dared cross the line he held with that towel wrapped tight around his waist, but the barrier itself teased with promises. The warmth that radiated from him filled the small air between us like a secret fire. It was the kind of heat that makes you ache without knowing why. I kept the rhythm. We met in brief encounters, pauses in the steady hum of my roots. A nod here, a cautious glance there. No words were necessary. The tension spoke louder than any conversation ever could. I caught his scent sometimes, a shade of eucalyptus mixed with something softer and familiar, like morning light filtered through linen curtains. He left me scribbled notes once, folded tiny papers that vanished before I could truly hold them close. A smile, a glance, a towel slipping just a little lower. I took those as invitations. Did he mean them that way? I wasn't sure, but I held on to the hope, tightly, like clutching a fragile cup of coffee on a cold morning. Every delivery blurred into a test, a dance where neither side knew the rules, only the steps. I noticed the way he lingered at the door longer some days, the way his eyes softened when he looked my way. And I felt the same, an ache that made my chest tight, a breath stolen in the moments when our worlds almost collided. I started to imagine what he was like beyond the threshold. Did he live alone? Did the towel mark the end of his morning rituals, or the start of something he kept hidden? There was an intimacy in these questions, a yearning locked in the space between his half-closed door and my quiet deliveries. Some mornings, I caught myself rehearsing words I never dared to speak. A hello that wasn't just work, a question about the quiet boy behind the towel. But the words caught in my throat, swallowed by doubt and the weight of the unspoken. There was safety in the silence, yes, but also a hunger. Silent, trembling, full of possibilities no one dared voice. I learned to listen, not just to what was said, but to the spaces in between. The sounds of breath, the shuffle of bare feet against polished floors, the soft rustle of fabric. One day, he left the door open, just a crack, and for a moment, our eyes met and held. The world shifted then. Everything I thought I knew fell away under the weight of that look, heavy, with more than just curiosity, thick with something like hope. I don't know how to explain it, except to say this. I was already caught in a story I never wanted to write, but couldn't stop living. The man in the towel had become my secret, my hidden fire, and every delivery was a step deeper into a silence I was desperate to break. You tell me if it was wrong to feel this, to hold a promise in the warmth of his skin, to count the moments until the towel appeared again. It was slow, it was quiet, but it was everything. The leak was a small thing, barely noticeable if you weren't paying attention. But when Henry asked me inside to fix it, everything changed. The door closed behind me, muffling the city's noise, and suddenly I was in his world, one filled with silence that weighed heavier than words. He stood there, still wrapped in that towel, but something about him was different under the soft glow of the penthouse lights. I noticed the way his shoulders tensed with every step I took, and the way the towel slipped just a fraction lower each time we moved. I told myself it was nothing, just the heat of the moment. Yet my breath caught more than once. The drip-drip of the bathroom faucet matched the rhythm of my heart, slow and uneven. I fixed it swiftly, hands steady, but my mind raced, caught between the humming silence and stolen glances that said everything without saying anything. He watched me, eyes tracking my every movement, but not interrupting. The tension between us thickened, folding in on itself like smoke in the quiet air. There was no need for words. The space between us spoke in touches, the brush of his hand against mine as he handed me a wrench, that fleeting warmth when our fingers lingered too long. I wanted to reach out, to bridge the distance that the towel still held like a wall, but I held back. The unknown was both frightening and thrilling. I wondered what it would be like to peel away the layers he hid behind, to feel his skin fully, to hear his breath without the shield of silence. Then, almost by accident, our eyes met again, wide and unguarded. He smiled, a small, shy curve that made the room feel warmer. I smiled back, feeling something pulse beneath the surface, something fragile and urgent. It was the beginning of a confession. Neither of us dared speak aloud. I stayed a little longer than necessary, pretending to check the faucet twice. The invitation was unspoken, but clear. Stay. Share this moment. Let the silence dam break. I wanted to say so much, to tell him what I saw in his eyes, the vulnerability, the loneliness, the hope, but my voice was lost in the hush. When I finally turned to leave, he caught my wrist gently, a touch so light I barely felt it, but deep enough to shock my skin awake. His towel slipped again, and I wanted to forget everything else, to just sink into that unexpected closeness. It was in that brief contact that I understood. This was no longer about deliveries or fixing leaks. It was about something deeper, something terrifying and beautiful. Desire, yes, but also a longing for connection, for something real beyond the walls of that penthouse. Outside, the city carried on, oblivious to the small revolution happening behind closed doors. I stepped out, heart still pounding. The taste of the moment lingered like a secret on my tongue. You tell me if it was wrong to want more, to stand on the edge of something unspoken and simply breathe in the possibility. That day, the towel was no longer just a barrier. It was a symbol of what could be, if only we dared to reach beyond the silence. The woman arrived like a gust of wind through the quiet space Henry and I had built between deliveries and silent glances. That day, the door opened, not to reveal Henry and his towel, but to a stranger, a woman whose presence fractured the fragile tension into sharp shards of doubt. She looked nothing like me. Her voice was light, her laughter filling the penthouse with a sound I hadn't heard before. She hugged him, Henry, with familiarity, a closeness that stabbed at something inside me, something tender and raw. I stood frozen just beyond the threshold, package clutched tight in my hands, feeling suddenly out of place. Henry's eyes caught mine across the room, quick and unreadable, then turned back to her. The smile he gave her was warm, filled with a history I was never part of. I realized then that the towel, the brief moments, the silent promises, they might have been just that. Moments. Nothing more. I wanted to say something. Anything. But the words twisted in my throat, tangled with the ache of watching them. I felt like an intruder in a story I didn't belong to. And yet, I couldn't move, couldn't look away. She spoke to him in that easy way of people who share a life. She brushed a lock of his hair back, and something in her touch made me step back, retreating into the hallway. The city noise seemed louder here, harsher, exposing the fragility of what I thought we had. Henry noticed everything. My retreat, the tension in my shoulders, the way my eyes lingered on the towel now forgotten at his side. But he said nothing. The silence between us was no longer comfortable. It was charged, unraveled threads of something that could have been. Before I left, he caught my hand again, brief but sure, as if trying to hold on to what was slipping away. I looked at him, and he looked at me. No words, no explanations, just that grip, and a quiet apology written in his eyes. Outside, the world kept spinning, indifferent to the fracture I felt inside. I tried to convince myself that whatever this was, whatever we were, it was complicated, messy, undefined. But the sting of that moment stayed with me, a reminder that desire doesn't always get to be simple. I walked away with the weight of questions that had no answers, and a hope that maybe one day the door would open for me again, not just for deliveries, but for something real. You tell me if it was wrong to hold on, to want the towel, the silence, the man who had become more than a passing glance. Maybe I was just a courier, passing through his life. Or maybe, just maybe, there was a chance for the story to be something more. The woman was gone the next time I came. The towel was back. The silence resumed. But I wasn't the same. I had seen the other side of the door, and it made everything uncertain, complicated, and aching with possibility. That day changed everything. The casual tension, the slow burn of silent confessions, it was no longer safe or simple, but it was real. And sometimes, real is all we have. The wait between visits stretched long, filled with restless nights and thoughts that spun like the city lights outside Henry's penthouse window. I wondered if he thought of me at all, if the silence between deliveries was full of the same fragile hope I carried, like a hidden flame. When I finally returned, the air felt different. He was different. No towel this time, but a loose shirt draped over his shoulders, the fabric soft and worn. He looked tired, but there was a vulnerability in his eyes I'd never seen before, a crack in the armor he wore so carefully. He offered me coffee, the kind that smells like comfort and quiet mornings. We stood in the kitchen, the space between us smaller than ever, the silence now a delicate thread woven through shared glances and the soft clink of mugs. I could smell the warmth of the brew and the faint scent of cedarwood that clung to him. I noticed the way his hands trembled slightly as he reached for his cup, and I reached out, steadying them with a touch so gentle I almost didn't dare. His breath hitched, a short, sharp sound that made my heart leap. We stayed like that, the noise of the world fading into the background, replaced by an electric calm between us. He didn't speak at first. Instead, he let the silence hold us, thick and full, the kind only shared moments can make. Then, almost in a whisper, he told me about fear. Fear of being seen, of being vulnerable, of what the world might say if the towel ever fully dropped. I told him my own fears too, the ones wrapped tight in years of hiding and the ache of loneliness. We spoke in fragments, truths spilled between sips of coffee, the heat from our hands, a quiet reminder that we were no longer alone in this silent longing. The towel wasn't there, but I could still feel its weight in the space between us, the symbol of barriers erected and slowly torn down. I realized then that this quiet companionship was more than I dared imagine, a fragile trust, a tentative bridge over the divide. He smiled again. Again. That small smile held the promise of something new, something fragile, but worth risking. I saw the hope flicker in his eyes, matching the one burning steadily inside me. That evening, we shared pieces of ourselves in a way that words alone could never capture. The kitchen was filled with soft light and softer confessions, and for the first time, the distance between us felt less like an obstacle and more like a step towards something real. You tell me if it was wrong to open up, to let someone in after so long in the shadows. But perhaps that's what love means, being brave enough to share the quiet fears and the warm moments, the broken parts and the hopeful pieces. The coffee cup between us became more than just an object. It was a symbol of connection, of moments held delicately in hands that dared to reach out. And I knew, in that stillness, that what we had was no longer just a secret waiting behind a door. It was a beginning. The night was quiet, the city lights dimmed by the soft haze of dusk. The door stood slightly ajar, a crack just wide enough for hope to slip through. After everything, after the silence and the waiting, I found myself standing there, breath held, heart tangled in the fragile threads of what could be. He was there, Henry, wrapped in a towel. But it wasn't just the fabric holding him together anymore. It was something deeper, a vulnerability laid bare by the softness of evening shadows and the gentle weight of truth between us. I watched him, the way the towel slipped just enough to catch the fading light, the shimmer of skin beneath. Our eyes met, locking in the quiet space where 1,000 unsaid words hovered. I moved closer, the air thick with yearning and release. The world outside dissolved until it was just us and the stillness. There was no rush, no hunger, only a slow, unfolding peace that spread through me like warmth spilling over cold stone. His bare skin against my fingertips, the pulse of his breath in the quiet room. The faint sound of dripping water from the faucet fixed long ago. Each moment stitched together with an intimacy that words couldn't reach. I reached out, traced the line of his collarbone with reverence, and the tension that had held us tightened and then softened like a wave breaking on shore. The towel slipped further, but I only saw the man beneath, the flicker of hope, the trembling courage, the quiet promise to stay. He smiled then, the kind of smile that carries both release and question, longing folded into certainty. I leaned in, my breath brushing his skin, a whispered confession in the hush. After that, nothing was ever the same. There was no need for loud declarations or dramatic bursts of feeling. The silence became our language, the space between us filled with the tenderness of hands finding each other, of years of hiding washed away by a single touch. The towel lay forgotten on the floor, but it never truly left us. It became a symbol of what once was and what now could be, a boundary crossed, a secret shared, a love unfolding, one quiet moment at a time. You tell me if it was wrong to hope, to hold on to that fragile opening, to let the door stay ajar long enough for us to step through. Because in that silence, in that shared breath and touch, I found a kind of peace I didn't know I was searching for. And maybe that's enough.